From a queen who set an entire town ablaze with birds to a woman who may have become the world's most prolific serial killer, today's journey explores the darkness that often descends upon those who rise to power. It's said she was quite attractive, which only added to her appeal. Together, they had a son. Upon the emperor's death, Leo ascended to the throne, making Irene the empress of the Byzantine Empire. At first, all seemed well for Irene, but it was not to last. In a shocking act of maternal cruelty, Irene commanded her son's eyes to be ripped out, leaving him screaming in agony. The story of Maria is a tragic one, full of loss and madness. After a miscarriage, Maria descended into a state of paranoia, rage, and emotional instability. She was known to be violent, cursing at those around her and displaying strange, erratic behavior. Still, her legacy remains one of the most controversial in history. She had a special room for her tortuous activities, where she would mutilate her victims. Her obsession with beauty and the quest for eternal youth drove her to commit unspeakable acts. Maria I of Portugal, known as Maria the Pious, ruled from 1777 until 1816. But her reign was marred by mental instability. Maria was later taken to Brazil, but her condition did not improve. She remained bedridden until her death in 1816. Her family struggled for power, and during her time as queen, Castile descended into chaos. Her actions paved the way for the horrors of the Inquisition, where people were tortured and executed for their beliefs. Olga's brutality is remembered for its savagery, but she is also revered for her conversion to Christianity and later canonization as a saint. From eye gouging to mass executions, these queens and women of power were ruthless, each in their own way. Their stories remind us of the dangers of unchecked power and the dark paths that some rulers take in the pursuit of control. While some are remembered for their cruelty, others are remembered for their cunning and the way they navigated brutal times. No matter how history remembers them, one thing is clear. Their reigns left a mark on the world that can still be felt today. Isabella's brutal methods extended even to her own daughter, Joanna, whom she tortured for her lack of faith. Her legacy is forever tied to the horrors of religious persecution. Finally, Princess Olga of Kiev, who ruled in the 900s in what is now Ukraine, sought revenge against the Drevlians, the tribe responsible for her husband's murder. Olga's acts of vengeance were ruthless and gruesome, including burying ambassadors alive, burning her enemies alive in a bathhouse, and massacring thousands in one fell swoop. But perhaps the most infamous act of vengeance came when Olga set fire to an entire town using birds carrying burning cloth. Juana's descent into madness is believed to have been a result of the trauma from her turbulent reign and the influence of her family. Juana was said to have been obsessed with the body of her dead husband, constantly visiting his coffin and even taking it with her when she traveled. Her madness and the surrounding power struggles contributed to the unrest that gripped Castile during her reign. Isabella I of Castile, a queen known for her role in the Spanish Inquisition, made brutal decisions that left a dark legacy. While she might not have been the most brutal queen on this list, her madness turned her reign into one of neglect and despair. Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar is known for her brutal rule from 1828 to 1861. After the death of her husband, she took the throne and became infamous for her extreme isolationism and cruelty. Her reign was marked by widespread oppression, forced labor, and starvation, which led to the population of Madagascar being halved. Her harsh punishments included a trial by ordeal, where the innocent were forced to undergo terrible tortures. Christians were heavily persecuted under her rule, and she even reportedly starved her own mother to death. While some of the stories about her reign are exaggerated, there is no denying that Ranavalona was a ruthless leader who cared little for the suffering of her people. Juana la Loca, the Queen of Castile, ruled from 1504 to 1516. After the death of her husband, King Pedro III, Maria's health began to deteriorate, and she became increasingly unfit to rule. Her bouts of melancholia left her unable to govern effectively, and she spent much of her time locked away in her room, screaming in agony. Elizabeth Bathory was eventually arrested, but her immense power saved her from execution. Instead, She was confined to a castle for the rest of her life. The number of her victims remains unknown, but it could have been as many as 650. Elizabeth Bathory's reign of terror is a dark reminder of how power and madness can intertwine, leading to unspeakable horrors. Across the world in China, we find another powerful but ruthless woman, Wu Zetian. Born in 624, she rose to power during the Tang dynasty, ultimately taking control as the only female emperor in Chinese history. Wu Zetian was ambitious, cunning, and ruthless, using any means necessary to secure her place at the top. While some of her policies were progressive and beneficial, her rise to power was marked by bloodshed. Now we move to one of the most infamous figures in history, Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess. Once in power, she ruled with an iron fist, executing anyone who dared criticize her. It's said that she ruled with an authoritarian grip, quashing all opposition, no matter the cost. Her reign, though often viewed as tyrannical, was one of remarkable success in certain areas, including reducing corruption and implementing reforms. A countess rather than a queen, but her story is far too grotesque to omit. Bathory is thought to be one of the most prolific serial killers in history. She tortured and killed young women, lured to her castle under the guise of employment, believing that their blood would help preserve her youth. Her desperation for a male heir added to her suffering. She was married to King Gustavus Adolphus, a powerful ruler in Sweden, but she was no ordinary queen. Before their marriage, Maria was regarded as one of the most beautiful women of her time. It's uncertain if he survived the ordeal, as such a brutal punishment, in those days without proper medical care, often meant death. Irene's reign would eventually come to an end, and she was exiled to an island, where she lived her final year as a wool spinner. When her husband Leo passed away, Irene was made regent for their young son. But the throne was not secure, and many wanted power. This is a tale of cruelty, vengeance, and the pursuit of control. The price of power in the hands of those who would stop at nothing to maintain it. The child, covered in hair due to a rare genetic condition, was viewed by Maria as a monster. She rejected the girl immediately, and the infant's fate seemed sealed as the young princess faced countless accidents that could have been fatal. Maria's mental state deteriorated further when she blamed her daughter for the death of her husband. After his passing, she isolated Christina in a dark room, where she was forced to sleep beside her father's decaying body for a time. Maria's cruelty knew no bounds. Some even suspect that she may have caused the numerous injuries her daughter sustained, in what can only be described as a horrifying campaign of neglect and abuse. The woman who was once admired for her beauty and status became a terrifying figure, haunted by her own demons. Next up is perhaps the most famous monarch of them all, Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France. She was the symbol of extravagance and luxury in a time when the common people of France were starving. The wealth disparity was so extreme that it led to one of the most famous revolutions in history. One infamous story claims that when told there was no bread for the people, Marie Antoinette coolly replied, "Let them eat cake." While historians now believe she may never have said this, the story endures as an emblem of her disconnection from the suffering of her subjects. Whether she uttered those words or not, the public perception of Marie as an out-of-touch queen was clear. She indulged in a life of opulence, spending lavishly on personal luxuries while the people she ruled starved. As revolution loomed, her luxurious lifestyle became a symbol of everything that was wrong with the monarchy. Her execution by guillotine on January 21, 1793, was met with widespread celebration. Loyalists remained by her side, but traitors were swiftly banished or punished severely. Yet Irene's thirst for power was insatiable. She ensured her own face appeared on coins, a privilege usually reserved for emperors, which spoke volumes about her desire for authority. Let's begin with the story of eye gouging, as every ancient tale involving kings and queens seems to include such a gruesome act, and murdered, leaving Irene fully aware of what could happen to her if she faltered. Her son, now growing older, began to challenge her reign. The queen in question is Irene of Athens, born around the year 750. Little is known about her early years, but her family was deeply involved in political affairs, ensuring she was destined for a life filled with violence and intrigue. Irene might have been an orphan, adopted into a powerful family with Constantine Serenopetros, the head of her family, playing a key role in her rise. He was a patrician, a member of the ruling elite of Athens. She later married Leo, the son of Emperor Constantine V, possibly chosen from a bride show. As the regent, Irene employed the help of Byzantine special forces, the executors, and began ruthlessly eliminating anyone who threatened her rule. Being a female regent in such a brutal time wasn't easy. Empress Martina had come before her, only to be accused of poisoning. This led to an open rebellion, but Irene quashed it, and her son was dragged back to the palace in chains. A tragic fall for a once powerful queen. From one mad monarch to another, we now turn to Maria Eleonora of Sweden. However, her beauty wasn't enough to shield her from the personal tragedies that would define her rule. When a daughter, Christina, was born instead, Maria was horrified. But was Marie Antoinette a brutal queen? Her cruelty was more a product of her ignorance and indifference to the plight of her people, rather than direct malice. Over 300 witnesses came forward to testify against her, recounting the horrific abuse and murder. To ensure her position, she may have murdered her own children, though this remains a subject of debate. However, her methods of securing and maintaining power remain controversial. This mental breakdown caused a serious decline in her ability to rule. Though she was confined for much of her reign, her tragic story is one of mental illness, loss, and neglect. She was responsible for the mass expulsion of Jews and Muslims from Spain, as well as the torture and persecution of those who defied her rule. The town was destroyed, and anyone who fled was executed on sight.